Good day, everyone. Again, this is SCE135, Earth Science for Teachers. So we'll be discussing the first part of the lesson. We'll be having introduction to Earth Science. What is science? If we're going to look at the diagram here, you would notice that there are three major parts of science. We have natural science, social science, and of course, we have applied science. If we're going to look at natural science here, you would notice that it breaks down to the two major parts of natural sciences, which is physical science and biological science. Examples for physical science, we have physics, chemistry, and earth science. And for biological science, we have botany, genetics, taxonomy, and etc. So what is scientific inquiry? Science assumes that the natural world is consistent and, of course, predictable. It is consistent because it is basically, although there will be changes, but the changes is not that significant. No, like for example, if a particular in your locality, if there is a change there, the locality will not change significantly and, of course, abruptly. Why it is predictable? It is because since we already know the concept of science and we already know the concept of the natural world, we could easily notice and of course predict what will happen right after a particular process. And then the goals of science, because of these scientists appearing, um, their point of learning science here is to conform with the goals of science. And these are the goals of science. Of course, the first one is to discover patterns in nature. Why do we have to discover patterns in nature? Because we have to predict kung ano yung changes that will happen right after a particular reaction, for example. And of course, to use the knowledge to predict. No, um, the natural world. If we're going to look at the big picture of the environment or the big picture of the natural world, you could actually see that there are a lot of processes inside of it. No, and these processes are very complex. They are very complicated, and probably these processes could change kung ano mang mangyayari sa a particular specific place, no, kung if, for example, if it is on earth. That is why it is really it is quite imperative to look at some patterns to predict kung ano yung changes that will happen after. Now we have here the two terms hypothesis and theory. These two terms are very important when we are to discuss scientific inquiry. When we say hypothesis, this is the tentative or untested explanation. Some of which they mentioned hypothesis or they termed hypothesis as an educated guess because your guess is based on principles, based on observations. No? And it is also mentioned here that hypothesis is also termed as an untested explanation. Why? Because hypothesis really by if we're going to look at the nature of hypothesis, really hypothesis should be tested, no, for us really to confirm kung okay at tama ba yung hypothesis na construct mo. And of course we have the term theory is already tested, it is already confirmed, and of course it is supported by different hypotheses. Like for example, if we're going to look at theory of relativity, theory of relativity of that particular physicist, no, it is actually conformed on it is conformed with the different sets of experiments, no. It is already tested in every angle, it is confirmed in every angle. So if the results are consistent, therefore it is termed as theory. And then we have here scientific method. In every processes, in every idea to be processed in science, we actually use the so-called scientific method. The purpose of scientific method is to lead us to a perfect result. A perfect result that doesn't mean any literal, no. When we say perfect result, kung ano yung expected result. So, of course, the first step for the scientific method is to gather facts through observation. Yes? And that gathering involved po ang tinatawag natin na five senses. Okay? And then right after gathering facts through observation, that's the time that you could construct a problem. You can see problem. No, and nag-observe ka sa nature, and then right after observing, you notice something, and then it creates problem. Right after creating problem, that's the time that you have to create hypothesis. No, you have to guess. You have to guess something. Okay, correct. And then right after that, since we all know that hypothesis is untested explanation. Therefore, we have to test really hypothesis for us to tell if hypothesis is correct or wrong. Okay. So there's the if we're going to look at the third bullet, that is test hypothesis to formulate theories. Okay. Scientific method, scientific knowledge is gained through following systematic steps. Of course, again, the first one you have to collect facts, and then right after collecting facts, you have now there the problem, and then you have to develop your hypothesis, and then you have to conduct experiments because we have to test the hypothesis and then re-examine the hypothesis if you have to re-examine the hypothesis because siguro right after conducting the experiment, yung tinatawag natin na expected result, hindi yun ang lumabas no, right after. So you have to go back to your hypothesis, re-examine. You could actually reconstruct your what you call this hypothesis and then re-manipulate your experimentation or your experiment and then if right after doing that if you could still come up with the same result, probably that is really the result of that experiment. So theories that withstand examination and of course totally unexpected occurrences. So na meron tayong katanungan na if ever because really if you're going to conduct an experiment, conducting an experiment you already have your answer, no, at may tinatawag tayo na ano ba yan, expected result. Right after conducting the research or the experiment, ang lumabas na result is the unexpected one. Is that a wrong research or a fault research? Probably not. No. So the answer for that is not because there's no such thing as a faulty research. There's no such a thing as a mistake research. It's just that probably you have to go back to your hypothesis and re-examine your hypothesis, and of course you have to re-experiment. No. Then right after that, if the result is still the same, meaning to say that is really the result of that experiment. Okay, so we now have to jump to the concept of earth science. Encompasses all sciences that seek to understand, of course. The first one is earth, and then of course the earth's neighbors in space. If we're going to look at our K to 12 science curriculum, you would notice there that the label is not just earth science, but it is earth and space science. No, because if we're going to discuss earth here, we also have to discuss the neighboring entities of earth because meron tayong tinatawag na mutualistic interaction between the earth and then the other entities outside of it. Okay, so Earth science includes these four. We have, of course, the geology, the study of Earth. It actually study about the composition, the rocky composition of the Earth. We also have here oceanography, the study of the ocean and its organisms inside on it. We also have meteorology. Meteorology is not a study of meteors, no? Baka kasi we are labeling it as a study of meteors because of the root word meteor, no? But then again, it's not. No, if we're going to look at the definition of meteorology, it talks about the atmosphere. If we are to discuss atmosphere here, we are really to cover also weather and of course climate. Okay. Next is number 4. We have astronomy. Astronomy is the study of the universe. Now, it is believed really that we only got to learn astronomy less than a percent because of course if we're going to look at universe here, universe is very vast And there are a lot of claims that it is not just universe, but it is also what we call multiverse. Okay, that's of course we are very where if you're going to go back, no, to go back to the term history, kung paano na form yung tinatawag natin na Earth, kung paano na form yung tinatawag natin na universe, no? This is now the time that the theory of the idea of creation and then the idea of science will converge, and of course this is a very ano siya, strong debate. But then again, if we are teachers, we don't have to inject religion to our discussion, especially when it comes to science, no, because religion and science is different. They have their own nature and you cannot mix it. So, most researchers conclude that Earth and the other planets formed at essentially the same time. That is their idea. We have our preconceived idea that the entities inside the solar system, the entities inside the universe, they formed in different times, no? But according to here, meron tayong grupo ng mga researchers or scientists, no? They mentioned that the Earth and then the other entities outside Earth, they were formed out essentially the same time. And this is because of the idea of nebular hypothesis. Nebular hypothesis is the most famous um, the most famous idea of the of discussing, how the universe formed, and of course how Earth formed, and even the solar system formed. Okay, so the solar system evolved from an enormous rotating cloud called the solar nebula. If you're going to research galaxy, you would notice that a galaxy is composed of clouds. No, we're going to look at no clouds, and then the clouds are, of course, may meron silang kulay. may, they're very bright because of the dust, no? So that is basically the physical feature of your solar nebula. Okay, so let's try to look at the process of nebular hypothesis. The first one is the nebula was composed mostly of hydrogen and helium. Remember, hydrogen has an atomic number 1. The atomic mass or weight is 1.0081, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, helium is atomic number 2, right? Okay. Helium is atomic number 2. And also, because of this, it is believed that hydrogen and helium, they are the most, they are the most, no? They are the oldest element inside your periodic table of the elements. Okay. So letter B, about 5 billion years ago, the nebula began to contract. So when we say contract, unsa man? Now when we say contract, kasi nahitabo ni reduce ang iyang size. No? Ni contract siya. Okay. So let's see. It assumed a flat, very flat. You'll imagine. Right after contracting the nebula, it assumed a flat, para siya ano natin, disk, no? A divided disk or a CD disk. Okay, a disk shape with protosun or pre-sun at the center. Tinawag siyang pre-sun because right after contracting the nebula, the center of which formed very hot ball, and that is now your protosun or your pre-sun. Yes, very good. Okay. Then the letter D, inner planets begin to form from metallic and rocky clumps. No? Pag sinasabi natin mga inner planets, ito yung Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. They were termed as inner planets because they are composed of rocky components. Okay. Letter E, larger outer planets began forming from fragments with a high percentage of ices. That is why, if we're going to look at once again, if we are to look at the arrangement of our planets, you would notice that from the inner up to the outer, now if we're going to compare their composition, the inner planets are more rocky. The outer planets are more gaseous. Okay, so that is still part of the idea of nebular hypothesis. Now let's try to look at the picture, no, so that we could imagine. Letter A here is what we call the solar nebula. The solar nebula starting to contract. Now, if we're going to notice the arrows there, you would notice that the arrows are pointing inwards. Okay, so that's the time that the solar nebula is contracting. Right after that, please notice letter B here. The letter B, you would notice na meron tayong very light na sa center. It is because it is now the time na construct yung tinatawag natin the protosun or pre-sun. And then of course, if we're going again, letter E here, meron na tayong tinatawag na mga inner planets and outside planets. Okay, so that is the idea of nebular hypothesis. Although the idea of nebular hypothesis is not so clear, but then again, this is a strong basis of how to defend or how to argue the creation or the formation of Earth and even the solar system. Okay, again, that is nebular hypothesis. I already posted ideas and video clips about nebular hypothesis, so kindly check on it sa Google Classroom natin. Okay, so a view of Earth. So we'll now focus more on the formation of Earth. Layers form on Earth. As Earth formed, the decay of radioactive elements and heat from high velocity impacts caused the temperature to increase. No, this is now the idea of chemistry and physics that if we have a high velocity impacts, it could automatically increase the temperature. And then lighter rocky components floated outward toward the surface. And then the gaseous material escaped from Earth's interior to produce the primitive atmosphere. So sa Earth, no, sa inside of Earth, the decay of the radioactive elements ni-increase yung temperature. That is why mainit po yung ilalim ng Earth. No? And then the lighter rocky components, they are floated outward. And ito na ito yung tinatawag natin na the crust level of the Earth. And then the gaseous material, they escape from Earth's interior, and that is now the atmosphere of the Earth. So here are the Earth's major spheres. No, we have hydrosphere. The hydrosphere is the liquid part of the Earth. Ocean is the most prominent feature of the hydrosphere. This is nearly 71% of Earth's surface, holds about 97% of Earth's water. It also includes fresh water found in streams, lakes, and glaciers, as well as that found underground. The other major spheres we have is atmosphere. They are very thin, tenuous blanket of air. One half lies below 5.6 kilometers, and that is 3.5 miles. And then the biosphere, and it includes life. That is why tinawag siyang bio, means life, concentrated near the surface in a zone that extends from the ocean floor. When we say the ocean floor, because we still believe that there are still organisms even on the ocean floor, no? Up to the upper part of the atmosphere. So that is the coverage or the scope of biosphere. And then the last major sphere we have is geosphere. That is the rock, the hard composition part of your Earth. Based on compositional differences, it consists of the crust, mantle, and core. Crust is the thinnest region of the Earth, and then mantle is the thickest region of the Earth. And then core is considered to be the innermost layer of Earth. And remember, we have the term outer core and then the inner core. Okay, so this is now the interaction of the four major spheres of Earth, and it is now termed as system. No, tinawag silang system because these components, they are working interdependently so that the Earth will still alive. Okay, so let's try to look at a closer look of the Earth. So meron tayong kinuha na part dyan. And then let's try to mention some terms na nakinuha. Of course, we have the oceanic crust. The oceanic crust we will be discussing oceanic crust when we proceed to plate tectonics. And then continental crust also. And then of course, you are very familiar with the term lithosphere. Lithosphere is the yuta part wherein pwede pa nating ano ba yan, ma-dig in, no? That is the lithosphere part. And of course, the upper mantle, as you look at. And then we have here the not so familiar term that is asthenosphere. Okay, asthenosphere. If the definition of asthenosphere is, or the mechanism of asthenosphere is, this is the weakest region of the Earth. No? So weakest region of the Earth situated between the upper mantle and then the lithosphere, that is asthenosphere. Asthenosphere will be more discussed when we will be discussing or know more about volcanoes and of course earthquakes. Okay, this topic here is very elementary, no? Because these two terms are very famous in ARPAN or Araling Panlipunan. So representing, this is now to determine the location inside our Earth, latitude and longitude. Okay, so latitude and longitude are lines on the globe that are used to determine location. When we say latitude, it is the distance north or south of the equator measured in degrees. So when we say, if you're going to imagine latitude here, this is now the line that is on the horizontal part. Okay. So imagine equator. So when we say latitude, this is now the distance between the north and then the south of your equator. Okay. Next is longitude. Longitude, on the other hand, is the distance east or west of the prime meridian. The prime meridian now is the center. Okay. So ito yung tinatawag natin na primary and that is the line. So let's try to look at this is now the vertical line on the surface of the earth. Okay. So this is longitude. Again, latitude and longitude. So what is now system? Okay. I did mention about the interactions of the different major spheres inside Earth, and it is now composed of a system. Now, it made them a system. So what is a system? A system is any size or group of interacting parts that form a very complex whole. No? So closed systems, so we have two types, by the way, of system. We have closed systems and then open systems. Wrong spelling yung gumagamit na close na walang D, ha? So hindi tayo close, but closed. Okay? So we really have to correct ourselves. Kung merong nakasara, that is closed. Hindi yan closed na walang D. Wrong spelling na siya. So closed systems are self-contained. Very good example is an automobile cooling system. Sir, bakit po tinatawag siya na self-contained po na mafe-feel po natin yung cooling system? Okay. So this is now the problem when it comes to closed systems. Kasi nga, it's either some materials, okay? It is either materials will go out or materials from the outside will go in. So either siya, no? On the other hand, when we talk about open systems, open systems allow both energy and matter to flow in and out of the system. Very good example for that is a river system. So if you are to picture out open systems, tinawag siya literal na open system, it is because materials can go in and out. Okay. Next, the question is, what type of system is Earth? If we're going to go back, and to look at the picture of Earth, you could actually see that Earth here is an open system. Or perhaps you could say that Earth is a closed system, a system, sorry. That is both true because remember, Earth has a very complex processes. And then we also have the term subsystems. No? Sa isang lugar, meron kang tinatawag na system, no? In your comfort room siguro sa bowl or sa bowl pa lang siya, no, and then sa basin for example meron ka ng tinatawag na system, no, in your kitchen for example your rice cooker meron siyang different system. Okay, so meaning to say your earth here is composed of different systems because it composed of what we call subsystems. Earth is a dynamic body with many separate but highly interacting parts or spheres. Now, yung tinatawag natin na four major spheres, they are interacting interdependently and they make this as we call system. Earth system science studies Earth as a system that is composed of numerous parts or subsystems. So for example, yung tinatawag natin hydrologic cycle. Hydrologic cycle is a system. But hydrologic cycle is also part of the term biogeochemical cycle, which is also a system. So marami siya. So we call it subsystems. Now we mentioned about energy, and then let's try to look at the sources of energy of the Earth. So meron tayong tinatawag na internal source of energy, and then meron din tayong tinatawag na external source of energy. Ang sun is considered to be an external source of energy. It drives the important processes inside Earth. Very good example, weather. Okay. Remember that the power of sun here drives the weather of the day, drives ocean circulation, and of course, it also drives erosional processes. Next to it is the Earth's interior, no, the inner and then the outer core. That is also a source of energy. It drives internal processes, including volcanoes, earthquakes, and mountain building. Consists of a nearly endless array of subsystems. I did mention about hydrologic cycle, that our Earth as a system here, it consists of different or a lot of subsystems. An example for that is hydrologic cycle. And of course, since humans are part of Earth, therefore we are part of the Earth system. Okay, since we are now talking or mentioning humans, no, and then how humans interacted with the Earth, it is now timely to discuss about people and then the environment. What is now the role of the people sa environment, and what is now the role of environment towards the people? We have this mutualistic interaction between people and environment, but we cannot deny that we have the term exploitation between this relationship. Environment, when we say environment, surrounds and influences organisms. If you're going to, again, picture out the relationship between people and the environment, people are being influenced by the environment. No, kung ano yung configuration ng environment, people will be affected, they will be influenced, they will be affected, and of course, since they will be affected and they will be influenced, people will change. Okay. Next, physical environment encompasses water, air, soil, and rock. Now, we have here the term environmental. Now, the term environmental is not new for us. That is actually a cliche term. But the term environmental is usually reserved for those aspects that focus on the relationships between people and then the natural environment. Kaya tinawag siya na environmental. Okay, so here's now the resources. This is very important when we discuss people and the environment, no? Kasi nga, resources are very essential as part, no, as a factor between people and the environment. So resources include water, soil, minerals, and energy. And mainly during our elementary science, no, our science teacher mentioned about the two broad categories of resources. First one is renewable, and then the second one is non-renewable. Renewable literally can be replenished. No, these are the resources that can be replenished by some time. For example, plants. If you're going to cut trees, no, right after that, the trees will grow after some time. Energy from water and wind. Okay. Next, on the other hand, is the non-renewable, cannot be replenished in the near future. Although the metals can be, you could actually use metals for a longer time, but the process of replenishing the material or the resource matagal din. Kaya tinawag din siya na non-renewable. Now, the question is, meron bang chance na itong tinatawag nating renewable resources will also be termed as non-renewable resources? Yes. This is very dramatic when it comes to resources. It is because, remember, I did mention about the term exploitation, yes. Because of the term exploitation, the renewable resources are now part of the non-renewable resources. Kasi nga, marami nang gumagamit ng resources, and then the nature don't have any time to replenish kung ano yung nawala. So instead, those materials resources can be part of a renewable resource that is now part of the non-renewable resources. And that is very dramatic and very sad to look at. Next, this one. This factor is very important also in determining the relationship between people and the environment. And this is population. Because I did mention again exploitation, because of that term, no, yung tinatawag nating exploitation, they came from the so-called population. So what is now really the impact of population to the environment? Population of the planet is growing rapidly, and that is true. Mas marami pa yung nabubuhay kaysa namamatay. Although if we're going to again look at statistics, araw-araw merong namamatay, but then again you cannot deny that araw-araw meron ding nabubuhay. And then if you are to look at the numbers, mas marami pa talaga ang nabubuhay. So why not patayin lahat? Okay. Next, use of minerals and energy has climbed more rapidly than the overall growth of population. So the second bullet talks about exploitation. We used minerals and energy more than the growth of the population. No, so that is why exploitation really is a very big factor. That is why yung tinatawag natin na appropriateness sa resources ay wala na. Now, if you are to look at this graph here, this is the growth of world population. You would really notice the significant increase of the population. Starting from 4000 BC to AD and then year 2000, you would notice that in the early 1800s, that is 1 billion, 1930, that is 2 billion, 1975, that is 4 billion, and year 2000, that is 6.1 billion. Okay? So again, this population, the increase, the rapidly increase of population is a factor of the term exploitation. Because the resources kasi nagiging limited na siya, therefore competition is very much not really appreciated but very apparent, no? Because of this competition, lumalabas ang tinatawag natin na exploitation. No, we are using much the power of minerals and energy without noticing that these particular resources can still be replenished. Instead na ma-replenish siya, ginagamit pa rin natin siya, so wala na po siyang time to replenish. And that is now exploitation. And because of that, it brought to what we call environmental problems. No? Our environmental problems is not just global, but it is also local. No? It is not just local also, but it is also global. And that is not a problem. Local, regional, global. Okay. Caused by people and societies. The main factor of these environmental problems are anthropogenic. Pag sinasabi natin anthropogenic, I really miss the term anthropogenic pressure now. Anthropogenic is a factor that is being exerted by people. And pag sinasabi nating anthropogenic na nagigiba natin kung ano yung natural composition of that something. And because of this, we have urban air pollution. We also have acid rain. Kasi nga, ang Iligan, for example, they're aiming to be one of the parang, ano ba yan? Global steels and so on. Marami ng factory for a particular place and it contributes to the acid rain. And then ozone depletion. The nice thing now is most of the appliances, if not all, they have now, ano ba yan? Wala na yung tinatawag na excretion of CFCs or chlorofluorocarbons, no? To deplete our ozone. That's the nice thing. And then for the global scope of your environmental problem, you have now the global warming. This is very sad because I don't know if it is still true up until now, but I knew some information that people from US they don't believe on climate change. They don't believe on the statistics that or research that says every year nag-increase ang global temperature to 1 degree Celsius. They don't believe in that. They don't believe that the melting of ice caps is because of the climate change and global warming. And this is very sad and dramatic. Caused by natural hazards, ito hindi natin ito makokontrol kasi nga, these are natural hazards. For example, earthquakes and landslides. Okay, so those are the first coverage for the introduction of Earth science. If you have questions, you just have to message me on Facebook or message sa GC natin, or you can send me a private comment or private message on Google Classroom. Okay, so please take note of the things that I posted. There are links there for you to watch some videos and information about the discussion. Thank you so much and keep safe, everyone.